So some of our main topics today are going to be about macronutrients and discussing the different food groups, applying to what is MyPlate and how to read food labels, special dietary needs for older adults, along with the role of antioxidants.
We're also going to go over the diet for menopause and postmenopause, some physical activity recommendations. We're going to go over organic versus non-organic foods. And then we're going to learn how to make healthy choices on a budget. So, why care about nutrition now? Well, many of you are here today because you must care a bit about your nutrition status. Maybe you're here to learn more about how to improve your own nutrition, or maybe you'd like to gain some information for a loved one. Maybe that loved one encouraged you to attend this presentation. Either way, we're glad you're here and ready to learn. Proper and adequate nutrition is important for every age since the body is constantly changing. Proper nutrition for older adults can reduce the risk of developing chronic diseases, plus the reoccurrence of these diseases. Weight loss or weight gain can aid in pain management, extend the lifespan, and improve the overall quality of life.
Yeah, really driving home what Jess said, especially the quality of life. We can talk a lot about chronic disease prevention, but we really want you guys to become informed consumers and knowing how to properly fuel yourself so you can do activities you love with your loved ones, friends, whatever that may be. We just want to make sure that you're having a good, healthful life.
Absolutely.
So first, we're going to kind of go back to the basics and define what exactly are macronutrients. And I'm kind of going to go back a little bit and begin this because we can see a lot on the internet, social media, magazines about different diet trends and fads. It can be pretty confusing to know what's actually healthful and what can be more harmful. So to start and define, macronutrients are, simply put, nutrients needed by the body in large amounts for energy. So we have three types of macronutrients. We have carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Carbohydrates are the body's primary energy source. The human brain alone needs 130 grams of carbohydrates just for normal functioning. So it's a pretty important macronutrient. It's worth 4 calories per gram. Protein, that's responsible for muscle building, tissue repair, and hormone production. And that's also worth 4 calories per gram. I bring up the calories per gram just to kind of get the idea of how much energy it's worth. So looking at carbohydrates and protein, next we have fat. That's a pretty big punch. It's worth 9 calories per gram compared to carbohydrate and protein's 4 calories. And that's because it's used for energy storage. And in addition to that, it can also help produce hormones and regulate our other body systems. Yeah, next slide, please. So applying what we just learned about macronutrients, how does that look like and present itself in the foods we eat? So I have depicted here on the slide a picture of MyPlate. So we have carbohydrates present themselves in vegetables, fruits, and different grains. And carbohydrates are also where we get our fiber from. Proteins can come from meats, fish, poultry, soy, and even kind of non-meat options like beans as well. And then we have dairy as kind of its own group to focus on just for its importance in bone health. And that can include cheese, milks, yogurt, and creams. Fat isn't pictured in this MyPlate, but when we're kind of looking at a daily percentage of fats, about 10 to 35% of our daily calorie intake needs to kind of come from fats. So it varies a bit person to person. And next slide, Jess. So we just saw a picture of what the MyPlate was. And we're going to now look at a table of the different food groups and kind of seeing what our goal should be per day. So starting off with the fruits column, for men, it's worth 2 cups, and women, it's 1.5 to 2 cups. So a cup or a serving of fruit can come from a whole food product, frozen, canned, or even like cut up fruit, as well as fruit juices. If you're not one to really like consuming fruit, you can also get that from a 1/2 cup of 100% fruit. The only con for that is you don't really get as much fiber from the juices, so something to keep in mind. And we could also get that from dry fruit sources. And vegetables are 2.5 to 3.5 cups, and for women, 2 to 3 cups. So that looks also like with fruits, it can be a whole vegetable, can be from frozen or canned items. And if we're kind of thinking of portion sizes, like a cup of vegetables looks about the size of like the palm of our hands. So it's going to take up a pretty big portion of our plate just looking at vegetables. And then next we have protein. We are pretty good as Americans in getting our protein. That can come from the different beef, chicken, fish, as well as beans and tofu that I previously mentioned. So for men, it's optimal for you guys to at least get 5.5 to 6.5 ounces per day, and for women to have 5 to 6 ounces. We usually don't measure our meat on our plate in ounces, so if we're looking at a visual representation, it's kind of easy. You can tell just from the palm of your hands, that's about 3 ounces if you're translating that to what it looks like on your plate. And then dairy is pretty self-explanatory. For men and women, it aims for 3 cups. It's the same across the board, just for its benefits in calcium. It has fat in there, pretty good source of carbohydrates as well. And that can come from a glass of milk. It can come from a 1/2 cup of yogurt or cottage cheese. And next we have the refined grains and whole grains. So this one's 3 to 4.5 ounces in men, and then for women, it's the same. So that can look like a 1 ounce portion of grains can be from a slice of bread or a 1/2 cup of rice. And then I had refined grains and whole grains listed in here. So out of all of our grains we eat, we want to aim to have 50% of our grain intake come from whole grains. So that looks like choosing the whole wheat bread or brown rice or quinoa, something of that sort. And before we move on, I did see a comment that fruits are higher in sugars. So that's where, well, the dried fruits are. That's where we have to really be aware of how looking at our portions. So it's okay to put dried fruit, but it kind of depends on how much you eat or what you pair it with. A kind of good rule of thumb, if you're worried about spiking your blood sugars, make sure that whatever you have your cup of dried fruit with, make sure you have a good source of fat, a good source of protein to kind of help aid in the digestion and help not spike your blood sugar up as much, if that was something you were concerned with.
Yeah, Cynthia, I just want to add as well. I did see that comment too. And and some of the next slides that we're going to go into, we're actually going to talk about some of the things that may be added in those dried fruits. So stay tuned. We will get to it.
Yes, and that was an awesome point. But yeah, we can move over to the next slide. So just before we segue into the next part of our conversation, honest answers only, which statement most applies to you? I don't feel like reading food labels are that important. B, sometimes I read labels, but I mostly look at packaging. Or C, I thoroughly read all food labels. Okay, Latanya. Thank you for the input. Anybody else?
Feel free to add in the chat.
Looks like we have another C and then
No, you got a B
T's
in
and a B.
there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm honestly really surprised because if I'm being really honest, I don't always read my food labels that thoroughly. It's pretty time consuming and time intensive, but I love that you guys take the initiative. But this brings up the point for what can drive us to choose the foods that we do. It could be, I've always had this in my house, or man, that packaging looks really pretty, or like, look at these health claims on this. But what we should really use as our guiding force into food selections is what's going to be listed on the food labels. What's listed on the food labels is not biased from marketing. It is simply stated the facts. So moving over to the next slide. I put a sample food label on the side just so we can kind of walk through it together with 5 main points. So how to read food labels. First, at the top of the food label, we have the serving size listed. This simply just puts how much you can expect to get out of your container. So for this example, we can expect to get about 8 servings per container, and then listed right below explains what that serving size is. So a 2/3 cup. And then calories is the amount of energy you can expect to get out of that specific serving size. And then 3 is the nutrient breakdown. And I feel like that's where things can get a little gray and we can be influenced by a lot of marketing and diet trends to kind of convince ourselves what's good and what's bad. So here we have listed our macronutrients. We have our fat, total carbohydrate, protein. Okay, awesome. Another thing we need to look at is within our fat, trying to avoid or limit foods that are higher in saturated fat just because of the negative health repercussions it could have on our blood cholesterol and our blood pressure, especially if that's something that you're already susceptible to. And eliminating trans fats. A lot of food products have jumped on board for eliminating that from a lot of food labels or their food products. So that's kind of nice, that's taken care of. Another thing that is popular to look at is the sodium levels. So for this label, it's 160 milligrams. That's a pretty low amount of sodium per serving. So just depends looking at the amount of sodium, how much you plan to put on your plate. An optimal amount of sodium, if you want to keep it low, is going to be under 200 milligrams per serving. And then next we have the carbohydrate. We have the fiber listed. It's about 4 grams, so it's a pretty good source for that serving. And then below we have the sugars. So we have total sugars that could be applied to sugars that are naturally present in food. Doesn't mean they're good, doesn't mean they're bad, they simply exist. The thing we need to watch out for and monitor is the amount of added sugars. So that's where we could see the bigger spikes in the blood sugar and kind of the negative health repercussions, especially if any of you guys are pre-diabetic or diabetic. So this one has 10 grams of added sugars or 20%. That's pretty high for a food label. So if we're looking at food labels, we want to try to keep it underneath 20%, especially if it's just out of 1 serving. And then listed below is a little bit of breakdown of vitamins and minerals. These are micronutrients that we need in smaller amounts throughout the day that could really help with nutrient absorption, energy production, a whole bunch of other things. We're not going to get into that. So for this label, it has usually listed the most prevalent micronutrients that are listed. So, and I know the USDA requires to have what's listed in this example now. So that's always a good guide for you. And then throughout this entire label, we see a percentage on the side. This is a daily value that was instituted and based off a 2,000 calorie diet. So everyone's calorie and energy needs are going to be different person to person. So take it with a grain of salt. You may need more than 2,000 calories per day. You may need a little less, but it's a good percentage as a guideline to kind of see of, okay, where am I at in my energy intake for the day? But yeah, Jess, you can go to the next slide. Were there any questions in the chat? Oh, you said you always check fats. Barbara, that is awesome. Love that. Okay, so next we're going to talk about special nutrition needs in older adults. Jess is going to talk about these three, and then we'll kind of take off from there.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia. So some special nutrition needs in older adults. We're going to start off on this slide with water, fluid needs, sodium, otherwise known as your table salt, and then protein as well. So starting with water, water is essential to almost all bodily functions, from lubricating joints to pumping blood to our heart. It's very necessary, and proper and fluid can benefit us by properly hydrating us. It can positively impact our digestive health and aid in nutrient absorption. As we get older, just the natural aging process, we start to absorb nutrients at a slower rate. So water is going to be very key for older adult nutrition here. And the goal for water needs every day is about 2.7 to 3.7 liters per day. And before we start to think, whoa, that's way too much, if we think about it, you know, if you have, say, a 40-ounce water bottle, that's really only 2 a day. So as long as you're staying, keeping that water bottle close to you and you're able to refill it throughout the day, it should be relatively easy, and just kind of a reminder that we do need to get our water intake as well. Next up, we will talk a little bit about sodium. And sodium is crucial for muscle contraction, plus nerve and cognitive function. Very important in older adult nutrition. Salt can aid in electrolyte and fluid balance. This is especially important if you live in Florida. It can get really hot here, as we all know. And so if we're sweating, we're really going to want to keep, and if we're sweating and we see kind of like the white spots around our sweat, we really want to pay close attention to our electrolyte intake, which includes sodium. So we want to aim to get around 1,300 milligrams per day of sodium. And we can easily find these on our food labels, like Cynthia mentioned in the previous slide. Next up, we will talk a bit about protein. And protein is necessary for maintaining muscle mass, preventing injuries such as falls and aches and pains. Protein can significantly reduce or aid in pain management, as it supports the muscles naturally. And protein can increase immunity and increase bone density. So the minimum amount of protein for men will be about 56 grams per day, and the minimum for women will be about 46 grams per day. Next slide.
Awesome, Jess. I love that you brought up in the previous slide about protein, that it's going to be the minimum amount. So thank you for doing that. We should really try to aim for having more than that if we can, especially if we're active. But yeah, moving on, we're going to go talk about some of the other special nutrition needs. It was asked in the chat and I answered, but I just want to verbally say out loud, when we're discussing older adults, we're discussing adults that are 55 and older, just to kind of tie that in together for the amounts that we're listing. So next topic we're going to talk about is fiber. For men, it's recommended for them to have 30 grams per day. In women, 21 to 25 grams per day. Fiber is so important, and it can help with nutrient absorption. It can help in aiding in digestion. It could promote healthy bowel movements and regularity that we need. And it could also, due to fiber's solubility, It could help reduce blood cholesterol. It can also help with controlling our blood sugars. And it can help having consistent amounts of fiber per day. It can help with our hunger and like satiety cues. So our body gets better at letting us know where, okay, I think I've had enough to eat this meal, or letting us know when we're ready to eat the next thing. It's important to note if you're aiming to implement more fiber that you normally don't eat, it's important to have water be coupled with fiber as you slowly, keyword slowly, start to increase. So if you're like, oh, cool, I only eat like 17 grams of fiber per day, I want to aim for like 35 and get some extra points. Don't do that. Try to increase it slowly, make it something that's manageable, and really supplement water with it to help with any bloating or flatulence or any discomfort. So enough about the fiber talk. Another micronutrient we're going to talk about is potassium. Potassium and sodium kind of work together to help with fluid balance and blood pressure control. So it's good to have about 4.7 grams of potassium per day. We can commonly find them in bananas, which I listed, but you can also find it in other fruits and vegetables like kiwi or regular sweet potatoes, something that we know we could eat pretty easily every day, as well as dark leafy greens and vegetables like spinach or kale, broccoli, as well as tomatoes. So next we have calcium. This one is a really important one that's harped around adults your age, especially for its bone health benefits. Calcium is commonly associated with different dairy products where you can find it, but for those of us that are lactose intolerant, there are also non-dairy sources of calcium you could get. So if you're not a huge milk drinker, you don't like having dairy products a lot throughout the day, your bones are not destined to be brittle. You can find calcium in nuts like almonds. You can find it in tofu. It's also available in orange juice and in different canned fish items. So if you like having canned tuna, it's a pretty good source of calcium, as well as dark green vegetables and leafy greens. And when we're having calcium, it's a good thing to look at our food label in that little micronutrient section if it's also a good source of vitamin D, because that can help our body better absorb and use that calcium that we eat for optimizing our bone health, our bone mineral density, all things. Lastly, we have omega-3s. I discussed fat intake in the first slide when we were talking about macronutrients and what that looks like on your plate. So I said a percentage earlier that it's a good goal to have 10 to 35% of our 10 to 35% of our daily calorie intake come from fat sources. So within that daily percentage, it's good to have 11 to 14% of that fat come from omega-3s. Omega-3s have awesome health benefits that Jess will talk about more in the next slide, but omega-3s can come from different walnuts, chia, or flax seeds. The American Heart Association recommends that just implementing fatty fish like salmon or mackerel that are good sources of omega-3s into our diet has been shown to help reduce blood pressure and blood cholesterol. So it's an awesome micronutrient to really focus on, and it could help with inflammation as well, which we'll talk about in the next couple slides. But yeah, Jess, you can move on to the next slide.
Awesome. Do we want to answer this question real quick? It's a really good one, actually.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'll read it off. So it says, if I eat mostly whole food options and don't have labels to read, how do I know how much of each nutrient I'm consuming?
Karen, that is an
That's a
awesome
great
point you
question.
bring. Yeah, because a lot of whole food options we have come from the produce section, or they're not boxed.
Right.
So I
Or if you're
mentioned,
buying bulk, right?
yeah. I mentioned earlier on the food groups table, about what a serving size looks like. So for whole food options, let's use maybe think like potatoes, for example, or maybe oatmeal. If you have oatmeal, it can look about half of a cup, or like the size of like a cup on your hand. Or potatoes, if you do, I think it depends on how you prepare them. So if we're having like mashed potatoes or something, you do like half a cup. If you have measuring cups at home and you want to put it on your plate the next time you're cooking, that could be a good way to get an idea of like, oh, okay, this is what half a cup of what I make looks like. Yeah, Jess, do you want to add anything to that or any other examples?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to help people remember the serving size. I just wanted to give a resource to this person to tell them that the USDA has a really great tool on nutrition.gov where you can actually look up, let's say you have a medium Roma tomato and you want to see how much vitamin C is in that. You can actually look that up on the USDA and they have a tool that will help you with that as well. I mentioned the USDA because that's a trusted website. I'm sure if you look up the nutrition facts of a, medium Roma tomato, you'll find tons of different websites. So just, I would make sure to go to a trusted website. That would be my best answer for you.
Yeah, I know I personally used, and I can leave the link on the bottom as well, Chronometer, that was developed by dietitians as like an easy, accessible way for people to look up just what Jess explained, that outside the USDA. So we could definitely leave, whether it's email to Taylor or leave it in the caption, we'll definitely leave like links to that info. That was an awesome question, a really good point.
Just to follow up on that, we will link all of the resources in one spot. It'll go out in an email to everybody, and then it will also be on the website. So I will communicate that with you both at the end, and then for everyone attending, that will be available for you at the end as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, we can move on to the next slide.
Okay, great. Okay. So some additional important nutrients for older adult nutrition are antioxidants. Just by breaking down the term antioxidant, we can tell the function, right? Antioxidation. So before even going into antioxidants, we kind of need to talk about free radicals just for a bit, just for a tiny bit. So when oxidative reactions occur within the body, free radicals can form. Oxidative stress, which is chronic free radical formation, and free radical formation are generally known to be detrimental to health. So by knowing this, and knowing that we need more antioxidants rather than free radicals in the body, we can therefore prevent oxidative stress. And so now what do antioxidants do besides that? Well, and sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Some known free radicals include UV sunlight, processed meats, smoking, and alcohol use. So these are some of the free radicals that can potentially be harmful and cause that oxidative stress. Okay, so now some other benefits of antioxidants. Antioxidants provide benefits in pain management by reducing inflammation in the body. And because antioxidants protect tissues from damage, they can prevent inflammatory responses from happening in the first place. You'll notice that many fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and legumes vary in color. The pigmentation or the color of these plant sources are due to the antioxidants. A great example would be orange, yellow, and red colored fruits, which you may see in the picture below, and their color is responsible from beta carotene, an antioxidant. That's what makes these fruits and vegetables orange, yellow, and red. Certain micronutrients such as vitamin A, C, E, manganese, and selenium all have antioxidant properties. And therefore, foods rich in those nutrients will have greater antioxidant value and content. Thankfully, many staple foods and drinks that we have on a regular basis are rich in antioxidants. These can be things such as tea, coffee, berries, dark leafy greens of all kinds, spices that we may use in cooking every day, root vegetables, and last but not least, my favorite, dark chocolate. So now that we've learned a little bit about older adult nutrition, let's answer this question here. And feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat, just like last time. So which of the following is the best way to ensure that you're getting your specific nutrient need? I'm going to go ahead and just wait a little bit here for answers to come in.
It looks like everyone is saying B.
Okay, we all got smart cookies in this chat.
Yes. Awesome. I only see B's. So let's just quickly go over why it would be B. So B says, and I'm just gonna read the question again. Which of the following is the best way to ensure that you're getting your specific nutrient needs? And the correct answer is B, consistently eating a variety of different balanced meals, including protein, fat, and carbohydrates. This is important because when we eat balanced meals, we not only can be satiated from these meals, we'll feel fuller longer, we're knowing that we're getting all three of our macronutrients that we need. And in those macronutrients, we'll also find micronutrients as well. And in certain carbohydrates, right, that we know can be vegetables and fruits, we're also getting a little bit of water intake there as well. Cynthia, do you want to add anything to that?
I just love that all of you guys answered B. And I think moving forward, next time you're grocery shopping, wherever with family and friends, I feel like a lot of macronutrients can kind of go through phases, whether they're praised or hated. I feel like right now, like keto is a really popular thing. So you have some diets that like really harp on a macronutrient where, yes, we need it, but when you focus so heavily on implementing one type of macronutrient in your diet over others, you're losing out on your body's need for energy production. And how food is designed and meant for us to eat is it's supposed to be balanced and include a variety so we can get all of those vitamins and minerals that we need for proper maintenance and function. So just something to really keep in mind and take home, like next time you're kind of grocery shopping or reading things online or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It looks like we might have one question right here. If Ms. Jake, if you wanted to ask your question.
Oopsies.
And if you'd like, you can also type it and we can move forward and then address it at the end if you'd like. Go ahead and proceed.
Okay. All righty. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Thank you. So making healthful choices outside the kitchen. I think we've definitely talked about food all this time, but what we really want to talk about is, okay, so now I'm learning how I need to fuel myself and what that looks like. Now, what can I do with all this energy I'm starting to eat now? So next, we're going to be talking about physical activity and different wellness outlets that kind of bring you joyful movement and something that could help with general health benefits, which we'll talk about the next slide. So physical activity looks different for every person. I just really want to preface that. So, and it doesn't have to be conducive to a certain routine or a certain environment. So just because you don't have a gym membership and you're not going to the gym 5-6 days out of the week does not mean that you're not able to have a healthful, active lifestyle. So we know the benefits of physical activity, but maybe not all of us are naturally wanting to go lift dumbbells or like do that sort of thing. So in order to help make physical activity more enjoyable for ourselves, it's good to find exercise that you genuinely enjoy and that's applicable with your schedule. We don't want you to adopt an exercise routine that's not manageable or has you feeling stressed or not looking forward to your workouts. So the American Heart Association recommends getting physical activity about 150 minutes per week or about 2 hours per week of physical activity. This can look like maybe extra cleaning the house if you want to walk in dust your apartment, or spending extra time sweeping, mopping, vacuuming, gardening, things like that. If you like to kind of stay inside or aren't naturally as enjoying like physical activity outside. It can also look like if you want to have a 2-hour walk with friends and go get a cup of coffee or get breakfast afterwards, that counts. Or you can break it up throughout the week. If you know you work kind of like a sedentary desk job or something of that sort. Personally, I'm a student and I feel like I'm at my laptop a lot per day. When I can tell I'm getting a little bit distracted in my work, I'll take some laps around the house or walk around. So if you're in a work environment, like take an extra long walk to the bathroom, give yourself a break from sitting down so much. Or instead of doing 2 hours at a time, do a 30-minute walk in the morning or a 15-minute walk in the evening. Something like that, so you can get creative and kind of look forward to your activity time. That's also a time for you to just be with yourself. But yeah, next slide. We're going to be talking about menopause with Jess.
Yes, I'm so excited for these slides. So yeah, we're going to be talking about menopause. And before we get into it, I just kind of want to define, there's 3 stages. There's 3 clinical stages of menopause. And the first being perimenopause, then menopause and postmenopause. So perimenopause is the time leading up to menopause. So this can be, and it varies for everyone in age, but it can be from around 40 going up even to 45. And then menopause and postmenopause, interestingly, are interchangeable. So menopause, you will officially hit menopause after it's been 12 months of missing your last period. I know that was a lot. And then also postmenopause is going to be the same thing. So after it has been 12 months since your last menstrual cycle, then you will also be in postmenopause. So like I said, if you hear me say menopause or postmenopause, they are an interchangeable term. Okay. So postmenopause and menopause are basically the natural decline of hormones in a woman's body, including estrogen and progesterone. Like I mentioned earlier, it occurs 12 months after the monthly menstruation stop and begins around, and this varies from what I said earlier, but menopause and postmenopause will generally start around 45 to 55. And honestly, I'm excited to do these slides, but I know that when we think of menopause, it's often associated with the negative side effects, right, of the hormone decline. And some of these side effects can include insomnia, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease risk, fluctuating weight, hot flashes, mood swings, depression, and hair thinning. So the bad news is that all of these symptoms plus more can occur, and there are usually interventions or remedies just to treat the symptoms. However, the good news is that there are simple and effective nutrition interventions to support the body during this transitional and challenging time. And some of these nutrition interventions include increasing antioxidants, which we talked about earlier. These includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, lots of plant products here. And then also increasing our lean protein. This can include our fish, seafood, eggs, and poultry as well. And then increasing omega-3 fatty acids can really aid in helping that natural hormone decline that's happening in this stage. And some great sources include nuts and seeds, canola oil, fatty fish as well. It's a great source. And then also soy-based food products have been shown in many studies to help the symptoms of menopause and postmenopause as well. And some soy-based food products can include tofu, soy milk, so soy-based meat alternatives, and soybeans as well. And then just some foods to be mindful and limit when we're having these symptoms are added sugar and saturated fat. And I just wanted to point out that these two are directly linked to some of these risks here, osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease risk. So that's why we really want to limit added sugar and saturated fat. And we want to limit our alcohol intake as this can trigger symptoms. We want to limit caffeine. This can also trigger symptoms and can actually increase some anxiety here and there. And then spicy foods and refined carbohydrates are known GI discomforting foods during menopause and postmenopause. And before we go to the next slide, I just wanted to point out that these foods that we want to increase, you do not have to wait until you're perimenopausal, menopausal, or even postmenopausal to start to increase these foods. It's actually been shown that the sooner that we increase these nutrient-rich foods, that the lesser our symptoms are once we do get to our perimenopausal stage and menopausal stage. Okay, our next slides are going to be about organic versus conventional foods. And recently, the organic food industry has not only grown more popular, but it's grown more expensive as well. I bet many of you have seen some pretty good marketing for organic foods, and maybe some of you have had conversations or thoughts about the benefits of buying these organic foods. So what are the benefits? Before we get into that, let's first define conventional and organic foods. So conventional foods are grown or made with man-made pesticides or chemical herbicides. Animal products can be raised with the use of antibiotics and growth hormones, while organic foods are food grown or made with natural pesticides such as copper sulfate, hydrogen peroxide, and soap-based herbicides. Antibiotics and growth hormones are not allowed in animal agriculture and animal products. I made this table to conveniently kind of list the differences in organic and conventional foods. And on the column side here, where it says pesticides, nutrient density, and sustainability, these are really the three main pillars of what kind of influences what we buy, whether that be organic or conventional. So going in the pesticide column here, we see that organic foods contain natural pesticides only, while conventional foods contain natural and man-made pesticides. However, in both organic and conventional foods, these pesticides are on the very smallest doses, small enough for human consumption. And at that rate, they're actually 2 to 4 times smaller than the toxicity level. And just to keep in mind that whether it's a natural pesticide or it's a man-made chemical pesticide, there is a toxic limit for both. And so when the organic and conventional produces are, when they're determining that, they keep that in mind and make sure the doses are small enough in either or pesticides. Moving on to nutrient density, it's been shown that livestock may contain more omega-3s in organic livestock, and in conventional, while they show less amount of omega-3s, they are showing higher amounts of iodine in meat and eggs compared to organic produce. So it's kind of a swap here, a nutrient swap. So whether you're getting conventional produce, or I'm sorry, conventional animal products, or if you're getting organic animal products, you're basically just swapping one nutrient for the next. And when compared side by side, it has been shown that organic foods contain insignificantly more nutrient density than conventional, but at an insignificant level. It should not be a reason to buy organic over conventional for nutrient density, is what I'm saying. And last but not least, sustainability. It's been shown that in organic produce, there is little to no difference in the sustainability practices between organic and conventionally produced foods. However, I really want to point out that conventional foods are more financially sustainable, and conventional foods are sometimes grown with GMOs, which can therefore extend the shelf life of many different products, including produce as well. Okay, I love this picture. So I think that this is a really moving picture because we see a beautiful basket of fries, right? They look delicious. However, we also see that they are non-GMO and organic. So does this mean they're healthier?
Yeah.
Let's keep that in mind. We'll answer this question in the next slide. Okay, so there's tons of marketing terms out there, right? When we go grocery shopping, we've probably all seen these: gluten-free, GMO-free, a natural product. Maybe it's made with real ingredients, okay? Or clean ingredients. So some of these marketing terms that may influence what foods we purchase are some of these, but the list goes on and on, really. And while these stickers intend to make us believe that the food products are healthier, that may not always be the case, right? Like Cynthia discussed earlier, when we learned about food labels, the nutrition fact label should be our go-to resource when searching for the nutrition density of foods, right? Just because something is GMO free or gluten free, does that mean that it's going to fit our energy and diet needs? Not necessarily. So it's so important to, instead of looking at these marketing terms, our go-to resource is really going to be that food label, and making sure that we understand how to read it and that the nutrients listed are suitable for our needs. So just thinking back to that, I can't stop thinking about fries now. It's it's almost 7 o'clock. I'm getting kind of hungry, but those fries may not be suitable for everybody, especially if you're on a diet that you need to limit our fat intake, right? Or sodium intake. So to answer that question, having a GMO-free product or organic product is not necessarily going to be healthier. And not just to talk about all the bad, I do want to talk about some good labels as well. Some useful marketing terms include low sodium and no sugar added. This can be so helpful when we're in a rush at the grocery store. Maybe we don't have time to look at the back of the label for all the cans of beans that we buy or soups, or maybe we want to buy some frozen fruit or some canned fruit. This can be so helpful when we're determining what kind of foods that we want to take home. So keeping that in mind, and also this is just going to assess our knowledge for some of our future slides. I'm going to read this question off and feel free to add in the chat, just like the last times. Are healthy lifestyle changes and improved diet choices expensive? Well, Miss B struggles to buy many fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds with her $50 weekly grocery budget. She buys organic foods for the health benefits. However, this week, her dietitian said she needs to eat more fruits and vegetables. So how can she include more healthy foods within her weekly price range of $50? I'll give you all a minute.
It looks like Latanya said B. Oh, the B's are coming in. Looks like we have 3 people who said B. 4.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, B is correct, because buying a mix of conventionally fresh, frozen, and canned produce to expand her grocery haul and consume more plant foods will definitely include more healthy foods within her weekly price range. And I really want to mention that not only will it be within her price range, but also buying that mix of fresh, frozen, and canned produce can extend the shelf life and therefore extend her grocery haul and keep it, make sure that she'll have food for longer. And so it will create less spoilage. So awesome. Okay, Cynthia.
Yeah, next we're just going to talk about some budget-friendly options. I know we're a little pressed for time, so we're just going to move to the next slide. So the first thing to focus on is making healthy, affordable, and flavorful meals by shopping in season. So luckily, we, for the most part, have access to all fruits and vegetables and like produce items all year round, just because of like the state of farming. But what does fluctuate is the prices of those foods. For example, strawberries are getting cheaper now in the spring, but they're very pretty penny in the wintertime. I left a nice slide here that kind of gives some staple produce items. It's seasonability, is that a word? But yeah, it's that throughout the months and something to keep in mind. But if you're also shopping, I know different grocery stores have like featured magazines and stuff that will have deals on their produce. And that's a good indicator at what's coming in season and what's going out of season. You can go to the next slide. So if your favorite thing on the shelf is out of season, or it's looking more expensive, or it's not as stable, opting for canned and frozen options is just as viable. But when grabbing canned foods, for example, like Jess mentioned earlier, going for more low sodium, no salt added, and with fruits, having it canned in water or it being 100% fruit juice to kind of avoid those sugars and still get those health benefits we're striving for. And frozen foods are frozen at peak ripeness. So it doesn't, the nutrient content doesn't degrade as it gets older or like goes bad just because of when it's picked. And they're often cheaper and they're bigger and for buying it in portion size. You can go to the next slide. So I just left 5 main takeaways for buying on a budget. Plan groceries when shopping. I go there on a mission. I got a list just so I don't get distracted, especially going down the cookie aisle. Buying in bulk when I can. So if there are some staple items you know you like to have in your fridge or pantry, let's say butter or rice, for example. Stock up on it. You know rice is going to be good in the pantry for a while, and you know you'll eventually get through it. And something like butter, you're able to have 2 sticks in the fridge, and then I put the rest in the freezer, or doing something like that to get your discounted price for buying it in bulk and still making it able to last and not eventually like throwing it out when that's not the intention. And then opt for canned or frozen options for what I explained earlier. And shopping within your budget. At the end of the day, when we are at a grocery store or anywhere, unfortunately, it is a business. Companies are competing with each other to say, how am I going to get you to choose my product over other people's products? Don't be convinced by labeling or health claims that can make you feel like you have to buy a certain brand of peanut butter over another. And that's usually more expensive if it's like healthier. Stick to the back of the nutrition label to use that as your guidance. Just because it's more expensive does not mean it has more value. And then foregoing the buy one, get one deals. I read this in an article that a dietitian wrote, and I was honestly really surprised because I definitely do that all the time. Grocery stores can kind of get you in there and kind of get you in that, oh, I'm saving one. But what they'll do is they'll increase the staple price of the original thing. So you're buying it more expensive than it originally was, and you're buying more, and then you're risking throwing out a lot of those food items. So something to keep in mind to help decrease your waste and give yourself more space. You can go to the next slide. So we thank you so much for your time. We want to make sure that you know to eat enough food for your needs. Please talk to your doctor or dietitian to establish what those are because they are so individualized. Don't let someone on the internet tell you to eat 1,200 calories per day. It should really be evidence-based and come from a healthcare professional. Include colorful plates with a variety of foods to get all of the health benefits and nutrients that we need for daily function, and eat wisely by using their food labels as evidence. And lastly, Jess, you can wrap it up.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Additionally, like Cynthia talked about earlier, finding ways to include more daily physical activity and making sure that it's something that you love and you look forward to. It's so important. We also learned that conventional foods hold the same nutrient value as organic foods, so we really shouldn't be ashamed to buy them. Healthy food choices do not mean breaking your budget. Like we talked about, don't look at the marketing terms or don't look at the marketing terms of them. We should really just be looking at the food labels and making sure that whatever that price range, that it's within our budget, so it's sustainable to us. And we just wanted to thank you all so much for being here, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jessica and Cynthia, for presenting. We have actually one more slide in the presentation, and I'm going to let Professor Leviak go ahead and present this slide.
Thank you so much. And Cynthia and Jessica, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. And I just wanted to mention that we are conducting a research study here at UNF. And Taylor, I believe you sent this out as well, the flyer.
Yes.
And so just to touch briefly on it, we are looking at the associations between cognition and the bacteria found in the gut and the oral cavity. And so we're conducting a research study at UNF. If you're 60 years or older, and you can be cognitively healthy, have a history of mild cognitive impairment and or Alzheimer's disease dementia. And it's a one-time assessment at UNF. And if you're interested, the website is provided on there for more information. And also our email address is as well. And there is a $25 gift card that is available for participation in the research study. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Labiak. And thank you again, Jessica and Cynthia, for your presentation. Now is the time if you have any questions for any of our panelists. They'll be on for just a few minutes to help answer any questions that you may have. You can go ahead and put them in the chat or in the question and answer box. Thank you, Karen, for joining. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you guys for your questions. We really appreciate it. And so excited to hear from you guys.